Nintendo is my favorite video game company. They create the majority of my absolute favorite games of all time. Almost every game they create is enjoyable, they feel super inspired, and I always look forward to their next releases. While obviously not every game they ever make is good, there's always going to be some bad games, but I would say that they have a better good game rate compared to the majority of other major video game developers. I think I got a fair amount of Nintendo products. I even bought the Wii U! Oh. Oops. What I'm trying to show here is that I love Nintendo, and I don't want to come off as just some dumb Nintendo hater, because I'm not. I love their games a lot. But as a company, I really hate some of their decisions, more so than ever recently. And there's a lot of videos regarding this specific topic, but I wanted to talk about all of it. Everything Nintendo's done recently that makes me dislike them a lot as a company. But with that being said, let's get into the video. Let's start off by talking about Joy-Con drift. Almost everybody who owns a Switch has either had or at least heard about Joy-Con drift. It's been a major issue ever since the launch of the Switch. And nearly 4 years later, nothing has been done to resolve this issue. In fact, Nintendo's outright said that it just doesn't exist, and it's at most only caused a minor inconvenience to people. I have personally had Joy-Con drift and had to buy a second pair of Joy-Cons, and I can confirm that it is a very real problem. I didn't even have that bad of a drift, but in some cases it can make your Switch literally unplayable unless you have a different pair of Joy-Cons or a Pro Controller. The thing that's even more annoying is that it's literally $80 to buy new Joy-Cons, and about $54 for a Pro Controller. I feel bad for those who have a Switch Lite, because the Joy-Cons on the Switch Lite can also drift. But on the Switch Lite, it's an even bigger issue since you can't take the Joy-Cons off of the Switch Lite. So if your Joy-Cons drift to a point where they are basically unusable, then well, you just can't hold your Switch Lite regularly. And if you do get a new pair of Joy-Cons or get a Pro Controller, then, well, since there's no kickstand on the Switch Lite, you have to lay your Switch on a flat surface to play it with the new controllers, unless you buy some sort of a kickstand accessory. It's really annoying that Nintendo does absolutely nothing to fix this problem, and instead acts like it just doesn't exist. I'm very sure they simply do this for more money, since they probably get a lot more Joy-Con sales off of this. Nintendo does offer free repairs for Joy-Con drift, though from what I've heard, the repairs they do aren't really reliable, and a lot of times they just don't actually fix the issue at all. And also, it isn't free like a lot of news outlets were saying, since you will still have to pay for shipping and the extra fees. I just wish that Nintendo would fix this issue instead of trying to ignore it as much as possible. Anyways, on to the next subject. Now let's talk about how Nintendo's removing soundtracks of their games from YouTube. The most popular video game soundtrack uploader on YouTube, Givasunner, had his videos of Nintendo soundtracks removed in August of 2019 by Nintendo of Japan, despite the fact that Givasunner doesn't monetize any of his videos. And then Nintendo came in for round 2. In December of 2020, Nintendo removed Givasunner's soundtrack videos for Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and Mario Kart Wii. And 1 day later, Nintendo removed even more videos. This time, Givasunner's soundtrack videos for Smash Bros. 3DS and Super Mario Kart. And around the same time that Givasunner got a bunch of his videos blocked, Brawl BRSMTSMX3X, whatever it's called, who is someone who uploads extended versions of songs from video games, got his channel completely deleted by Nintendo. While I can understand why Nintendo would delete these channels, since the soundtracks to their games are their work and they have the right to do this, it still kind of sucks since there is no official way to listen to Nintendo soundtracks. Nintendo soundtracks are not officially on YouTube, on Spotify, on their website, or anywhere else. There is no official way to listen to Nintendo soundtracks other than actually booting up the game and getting to the part where the specific song plays. Which, to be honest, that seems like a bit of a hassle if you ask me. And you gotta keep in mind, Givasunner and Brawl didn't monetize their videos, and Nintendo could have easily copyright claimed it instead of fully removing it off of YouTube. Anyways, on to the next subject. Now let's talk about my problems with Animal Crossing New Horizons, since I believe this game is a good example of how Nintendo is turning anti-consumer. I'm going to try to keep this segment short since I already have an entire video where I talk about everything I dislike with this game, which you can go watch if you want. Basically, Nintendo makes it so you can only have one island per Switch console. Nintendo tries to say that this is to stop cheaters, but honestly, to me that just doesn't make any sense. I don't see how someone can cheat just by having multiple islands. It's pretty obvious to me that this is just to sell more Switch consoles. Anyways, enough talking about New Horizons. If you want more information on the problems with that game, like I said, go watch my video on it where I go more in depth. Anyways, next topic. Now let's talk about Super Mario 3D All-Stars and Emulation. Super Mario 3D All-Stars is a compilation game featuring 3 iconic Mario games: Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. Now what could be so bad about that? Well, a lot. Right off the bat, there was immediate controversy surrounding this compilation after it was announced. In the reveal trailer, Nintendo showed that the game would stop being sold both physically and digitally on March 31st, 2021. This is in order to create artificial scarcity, to basically make people want to buy this game because they feel like they have to get it because it's only going to be around for a limited time. Which also explains why they made this game at a full $60 price, even though it's just ports of old Mario games that are decades old, which should, at most, be sold at like $30. But is the compilation itself any good? Well, no, not really at all. It's one of the most lazy porting jobs I've ever seen. They made Mario Sunshine widescreen, which is pretty good. Super Mario 64's port is an absolute mess. No widescreen, even though Sunshine got widescreen, and it uses the Shindu version, which means that there's no backwards long jumps and no "So long, Gay Bowser" voice clip. Keep in mind, this is worth $60. Also, the menu of the actual compilation is pretty bad. It looks super bland and uninspired. Basically, you just get to select the game, see a little picture preview, and you get to read a little bit of text. That's about it. Also, where is Mario Galaxy 2? I can understand not putting 3D Land in the game because it isn't really one of the essential 3D Mario games, but if they're gonna put in Galaxy, they may as well put in Galaxy 2. It would barely take any extra effort, but I guess we can just forget that Galaxy 2 exists. Also worth mentioning that both Mario 64 and Sunshine are emulated, which is kind of ironic considering how much Nintendo is against emulation, and the emulation job is pretty lazy as well. The frame rate is the same as the original versions, and both Sunshine and 64 have been barely upscaled at all. There's an unofficial PC port of Mario 64 made by fans, which can run the game at 4K and 60 FPS, and you can even mod it to get HD textures and character models. It's pretty sad when the fans can do a better job than Nintendo themselves. Keep in mind, Nintendo also deleted this port from the internet so no one can play it unless you already have it or you want to go to some weird site. And they also deleted all ROMs for Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy. You can't download ROMs for those games and a ton of other Nintendo games, unless you know where to look. The only thing really going for Super Mario 3D All-Stars is that the games in the compilation are pretty good games, I guess. Nintendo deleting the ROMs of these games leads into the next topic I'd like to discuss. Nintendo being against emulation is kind of pathetic. Now, I can understand wanting people to buy your products instead of pirating them. I believe that if you enjoy a game, you should buy it to support the developers. But in the case of Nintendo, they offer no way to play their games, and they shut down emulation websites so you can't emulate them. As an example, if you want to play Earthbound, Nintendo expects you to buy a used SNES for $200 off of eBay and a $200 cartridge also off of eBay. And Nintendo takes down ROM sites, making this one of the very few ways to still play Earthbound legally. This is the same for mostly every other older game. Want to play Pokemon Black and White? Well, you're gonna have to spend somewhere around $65 on a DS, or $100 on a 3DS, and $40 for the actual game cartridge. Want to play Chibi Robo? Well, you're gonna need to spend $50 on the actual game and $120 on a GameCube. I think you get the idea. In Nintendo's free game service you get when you sign up for Nintendo Switch Online is pretty bad. Keep in mind, Switch Online is worth $20 a year for one account, which isn't a whole lot, but keep it in mind. The free games this service includes are all games from the NES, SNES, and that's it. And the games listed on this service really aren't anything super special. There's a few really good games on here, but most of it is stuff that I just really don't see myself ever touching. Like, I get that I could play Super Soccer for days on end, but eventually I'm gonna get bored.
You know what? No, I take that back. I will never ever get bored of Super Soccer. Super Soccer is the greatest game ever created, and no one can tell me otherwise.
And also some really big games are just missing from the service. Earthbound, Chrono Trigger, all the Final Fantasy games from the NES and SNES, Super Mario RPG, all of the Mega Man games from the NES and SNES, all of the Castlevania games from the NES and SNES, Harvest Moon, and the list goes on. And in the very rare chance Nintendo actually ports older games to the Switch outside of the online service, it's most likely going to be a limited release. Also, I forgot to mention, Nintendo has ported the first Fire Emblem game to Switch for the first time ever in English, except for the fact that it's only available until March 31st, 2021, and if you want to play the game after it's removed from stores, well, you're going to have to spend $100 on a Famicom off of eBay and $65 for the actual game also off of eBay. And even if you do get it, then you're also going to need to be able to read Japanese since it's only in Japanese. Also worth mentioning that Nintendo is estimated to be somewhere around $85 billion, so I think they'd be fine if a few people emulated Super Soccer. Also, Nintendo doesn't even get any money from these used copies on eBay, so there's not really a point to buying them. Overall, I'm disappointed by Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I was hoping it'd be a cool way to experience these great games, but it's just a cash grab. And I also wish there were better ways to play these classic games legally without having to spend hundreds of dollars. But anyways, on to the next subject. Around the time of the Switch's release, Nintendo decided to port Mario Kart 8 from the Wii U to the Switch. Except, on the Switch, it's $60. But why? Because they added in all the DLC from the Wii U version and decided to call it Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Basically, just putting Deluxe in the title gave them an excuse to make the game $60. Now look, I get that Mario Kart 8's also $60 on the Wii U, but the Wii U version came out in 2014. The Switch version came out in 2017. There really isn't much of an excuse for the game to still be $60. But Nintendo knows that Mario games sell pretty good, so they decided to keep it as $60 anyways. And it's happened yet again recently with Pikmin 3. Yet again, a $20 Wii U game, but they added a couple of minor changes and then suddenly it's $60, and it's called Pikmin 3 Deluxe.
I mean, seriously, does Nintendo really expect people to spend $60 on a port of a $30 Wii U game just because it has Deluxe in the title? Oh.
And sometimes they don't even care to call it Deluxe. With Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, the game's around $30 on Wii U, but it's a full $60 on the Switch port, and all they really changed was the visuals a tiny bit. And they didn't even bother to call it Deluxe. You might have noticed that I was using Amazon instead of Nintendo's official website to show off the price for the Wii U version of Tropical Freeze. Now why is that? Well, the reason why is Nintendo completely removed the Wii U version of Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze off of the eShop and the website. Now why did Nintendo do that? Well, the only reason I could assume is so that people are forced to spend $300 on a Switch and $60 on the actual game if they wanted to play it. I believe a similar thing happened with Super Mario 3D All-Stars. They could have just released the three games separately for like $20 each, but since it's a compilation, they have an excuse to make it $60. That's just a small little issue I have with Nintendo that I haven't heard that many people talk about before. But anyways, on to the next subject. Due to COVID-19, the annual Super Smash Bros. Melee and Ultimate tournament, the Big House, had to use online play since they weren't able to gather in real life. However, since Smash Bros. Melee is a 19-year-old game, it doesn't have a built-in online play mode, so they were forced to use Slippy, which is a mod for Melee that adds online play along with a few other features. So all was set up and the tournament was scheduled to begin sometime in December of 2020. Except, in order to use Slippy, you need to emulate Melee using an ISO file. And as we have come to know, Nintendo doesn't really like emulation, regardless of if it's legal or not. So about 1 month before the tournament was gonna begin, Nintendo sent the Big House tournament a cease and desist letter, and they had to cancel the tournament entirely. Something I find especially strange about this whole situation is that Nintendo not only forced them to cancel the Smash Bros. Melee part of the tournament, but they also made them cancel the Smash Bros. Ultimate part of the tournament, even though the Smash Bros. Ultimate part doesn't require any emulation. I can understand Nintendo didn't want people to illegally emulate their games, but the people that would have participated in this tournament are all professional Melee players, meaning that they most likely would have had their own legal copy of the game and ripped the ISO file from their own game, which means that emulating the game would have been perfectly legal and wouldn't cause any harm to Nintendo. The only thing I can think of that could have been bad for Nintendo is that this tournament may have given Slippy some more publicity, meaning that more people would want to pirate Melee to play online. But if that was the intention, then, well, it definitely backfired, since this whole situation got more publicity than the tournament probably would have anyways. This whole situation sparked the hashtag #FreeMelee, which got trending on Twitter for several hours. Several videos on YouTube were made in support for the Melee community, and it resulted in more publicity than if Nintendo just let the tournament happen. But don't worry, the Splatoon community is here to show their support for Melee. what could go wrong? After the Melee incident, Nintendo planned on hosting this tournament for professional Splatoon 2 players. However, a few of the players changed their in-game nicknames to #FreeMelee to show their support for the Melee players who got their event cancelled. One day before the tournament was about to go live, Nintendo cancelled the event due to players naming themselves Free Melee. Yet again, this caused even more uproar against Nintendo. The #FreeSplatoon began trending along with Free Melee, and several people began attacking Nintendo for these actions. In the end though, I would actually consider this a win for the Splatoon community, since they ended up hosting their own event that had a bigger prize pool, they supported the Melee community, and they had all of the people that would have participated in Nintendo's tournament. But as of right now, that's where the story of the Big House being cancelled comes to an end. However, unfortunately, that's not where Nintendo stopped doing terrible actions. As I'm sure most of you are aware, in 2019, Etika unfortunately passed away. Only a little bit after Etika committed suicide, someone by the name of Captain Alex had created custom Joy-Con skins known as Etikons to honor Etika. It costed $36,000 of fundraising in order to make them, and all of the profit would be going to a mental health and suicide prevention charity. And well, Nintendo being Nintendo, sent Alex a cease and desist. Keep in mind, Alex wasn't selling actual Joy-Cons, just skins you can put on your Joy-Con. And other brands have already made custom Joy-Con shells, but Nintendo was fine with those, so then why did Nintendo take down Etikons but not the other custom skins? Well, the Etikons had the phrase Joy-Con boys on them. And since it says the word Joy-Con, Nintendo saw this as copyright infringement and sent a cease and desist. I don't see any issue with putting the word Joy-Con on a Joy-Con. It doesn't make sense to me, but whatever, I guess it's copyright infringement now. Alex has been trying to make a new version of the Etikons which doesn't have the word Joy-Con on it, however it requires a whole new fundraising effort, and it needs to have another factory run. But that's still not the end of everything Nintendo's done. We still have one more thing. After a leak was publicly released in December of 2020, it was revealed in a document that in April of 2013, Nintendo talked to a 3DS hacker known as Namod as he was walking into his home. In this document, they wrote down exactly how to talk to Namod when approaching him at his home, and in order to figure out some of the information about Namod, Nintendo sent spies, or as some people like to call them, Nintendo ninjas, to literally spy on him. Based on their findings, they found out where he lives, where he works, what time he works, what days he works, what university he went to, found out that he spends evenings and weekends at home, found that no one entered his home or left his home other than Namod himself, and they also said that while they were spying on him, he went to a bank and a restaurant. It's unknown whether Nintendo still does this, but based on how they handle emulation, I wouldn't be surprised if they have done this with other major console hackers. I've heard some people try and defend Nintendo's actions by saying that they have the right to do this because this person was illegally hacking their console, and that it's not illegal to do, so there's no issue. And while yes, the person was illegally hacking their 3DS, and yes, Nintendo does have the right to do this, that doesn't really make it any better. Just because they can do it doesn't mean they should do it. Nintendo should have maybe gotten in contact with Namod in some other way than, literally spying on him for several days. I'm not defending Namod's actions, but Nintendo absolutely should not have done this, and I honestly don't see any way someone could think Nintendo's in the right here. Also, I'm not trying to make it sound like if you illegally emulate a Nintendo game, Nintendo's gonna track you down, sue you, and kill your whole family. You'll probably be fine if you emulate a Nintendo game, but it's still very creepy nonetheless. Anyways, on to my conclusion about Nintendo as a whole. Nintendo is an amazing company as video game developers, but the choices they make and the stuff they do is pretty horrible. It seems like the higher-ups at Nintendo of Japan are the ones making these decisions, since they are the ones who do more of the business side of Nintendo. I still plan on buying Nintendo products, since I love their games and consoles, but I really hate their decisions. It honestly makes it a lot harder to call Nintendo my favorite video game company. As much as I hate to say it, I personally consider Nintendo to be a fairly bad company, but a great developer. A lot of people seem to completely forget that Nintendo did all of these things. One day, everybody's upset over Nintendo's actions, but then Nintendo reveals a new Smash Bros. Character and some new games, and then everyone immediately forgets and starts praising Nintendo. I just hope that in the future, Nintendo will see the backlash caused by their actions and stop making these poor decisions. But, unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon. But with that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to go drink some water. Goodbye.